Ready.
Yes. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Two Girls Talk Transits. Today, we're reviewing the astrology from September 14th through September 20th, 2025. And we're your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kaleigh.
And welcome back. So, I wanted to talk about post eclipse events, the eclipse that happened on the 7th. I think a lot of the stuff was obvious, but like all the things that kind of came out around that were related to the eclipse. So, that's what the eclipse does is uncover secrets, right? Which is what we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think I wonder that like trying to Jupiter that the eclipse made really
Made
made
it
it more,
huge.
yeah, it
Yeah.
made it huge, like it made it
Yeah.
more expansive. I had heard another astrologer talking about this eclipse and they were saying that, oh, it didn't look to be that big, but I think they really missed this part because we had Epstein's 50th birthday book that was released that contained the Trump's birthday card to Jeffrey Epstein that was very explicit and literal child trafficking. There was a lot of evidence in that book with Trump in there, just period in general, which is a just like very literal eighth house eclipse for him because eighth house is about
Just like secrets. Yeah.
not even just secrets, your business partners, your
Oh, yeah.
collaborations, and Trump and Epstein were best friends and best business partners and best collaborators. And so Trump is featured in his book a ton of times. Plus, it's like there's this check that Trump wrote for to an underage girl, that's signed by Trump. The letter is signed by Trump, all this evidence coming out about his collaborations and his dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. Like that's a very eighth house thing. Like
Yeah.
all your secrets from your partner. So yeah, you could say eighth house is secrets, but it's not really that. It's really collaborations and like what you were working on with somebody else. And then if it was secret, the eclipse like literally pulled it out into the open. And
Right. Yeah.
I was just in, yeah, because I don't remember where Trump's Jupiter is.
I was
I
looking at
don't,
his chart actually the other day. I have it pulled up actually. I can pull it up really quick because I
yeah,
just
if you just
used
want to
it.
pull it up. I don't remember where
Yeah.
his Jupiter is, but I know he has a lot of 12th house planets that were probably getting hit by this eclipse through that trine.
His Jupiter is
And
conjunct his Chiron in the third. Yeah. I know.
Chiron always comes to play the deuce.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Libra. That's where I thought, but I couldn't remember.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I mean, but right there, that eclipse really was hitting also like a Saturn, Venus in the 12th through that trine with Jupiter there in the 12th right now. And so enemies as well was being activated for Trump, but like that's another 12th house like signification. And so
Yeah, so here would be like the
yeah, the
eclipse.
bi-wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right there, it wasn't like anything literal exact in his chart, except, oh no, it squared his Uranus exactly. Well,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
It was very disrupting. And again, Uranus in the 11th, so like his associates, who he was associating with,
Mm-hmm.
his friendships, and his collaborating business dealings. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was just very fascinating to see that. I wonder if anything will come out of the next eclipse for him in relation to that, which it may or may not. But,
Yeah, you never really know.
and also, like, is anything, I think the big question too is like, is this information going to matter, or are they just going to continue doing what we've been doing, which is just sweeping it under the rug and pretending that it doesn't exist and redacting it or like lying to the general public, like that's one thing about this eclipse that I'm not sure of yet. But it does have lasting consequences. And I mean, not just in the United States, too. There was also the Nepal protest and revolution with the
Yeah.
Gen Z people. You had
I know there's a
to,
lot of stuff. Yeah, there's there's a lot of stuff going on worldwide, but yeah, I did see the Nepal one. That's like the one that I did see. But yeah, I guess you had mentioned that it was like political unrest because they're cutting off social media.
Right. They were cutting off all of social media to try and silence just the dissent against the government. And obviously it kept saying Gen Z, but I'm sure there were other generations than just Gen Z, like part of this revolution. I'm sure it was something that was building up. It was like
Mm-hmm.
that restriction though was like what caused it to boil over, you
Well, if
know?
anybody's gonna get pissed about social media, it's definitely Gen Z, but
Right.
um I mean, in general, and Gen Z I noticed too is actually quite politically outspoken, which I think is a good thing, but um yeah, but because of that they like burned a bunch of buildings. They like burned the parliament and then burned the prime minister's house. So yeah, there was like a lot of stuff with that, which is quite interesting. I would think like the eclipse in Pisces would be like more flooding than it would be like burning things, but nonetheless.
Right.
I know Bali actually, I just know particularly because I live there, but the it had a really bad flood um
Mm,
recently, and I think that definitely would speak like to, a Pisces eclipse thing. They're also having a
right.
lot of political unrest at the moment.
I
Um,
saw just a lot of things in general about like Southeast Asia and Asia, East Asia in
yeah.
general,
It'd be interesting to like pull the chart.
for like that area or their country.
Yeah, just pull their charts and see like how
Hmm.
the eclipse affected their charts, like Nepal in particular and Indonesia, and see like what comes up. But um yeah, nonetheless, it's like big energy. Definitely I felt very overwhelmed during the eclipse. How did you feel personally?
Personally, I didn't feel like I felt it much because like similar to Trump's chart, it was more about like others, but I did get like a lot of reflection around my relationships and partnerships in a way that was a lot of like mixed feelings, I think, in general.
Yeah, because Pisces is kind of like calling you to like tune into your intuition more, I think, and maybe rely on like how do you feel about things and,
Right. And
kind
make
of like
sure it
those
was making your
unseen.
feelings just so loud in general. I think everybody's,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Yeah, like
and
normally I feel like I'm able to repress feelings, but during the
right.
eclipse, like I felt like I was not able to.
Yeah, it made those things really loud. And so I know, and I do wonder, like, obviously, if your feelings are heightened and you're acting emotionally, you're not acting necessarily rationally, which is very Virgo, Pisces in general, and
Hmm.
speaks to a lot of it. And I mean, yeah, the last one around which happened when the sun met the South Node exactly was the death of Charlie Kirk, which I'm not going to offer any commentary on that because that's not what this podcast is for. But it did, again, was another like eclipse signature of like a leader or a big voice or a big influencer in this country or in these political movements, like being like shot and killed for their beliefs and for their choice again. Because, a lot of, if you've ever attended like a Turning Point USA event, which I'm not proud to say that I have, but it's like they do really ramp up your emotions and they try to like really get you like triggered. Like they want you to like hate people or like get your emotions filed up. And like all political things kind of do this in some way, especially if you've been in like a political rally. It's always like us versus them, right? And
Hmm.
so the sun on the South Node is like, well, the consequences of that constant triggering and beliefs and like the release of that in some way. So yeah, I don't know. This eclipse it did its job, I guess. It did what
Yeah.
we
It'll
thought
be
it would
really
do.
interesting to see because this eclipse in particular, like we had mentioned before, didn't have negative aspects to it. So it was like, I
Right.
feel like for me, it was kind of like an unexpected, um, like just emotional response that I had had. Like, because I wasn't expecting it to be negative per se. And I'm not saying that it was particularly good or bad, it was just a lot. And it'll just be interesting because the Virgo eclipse that's coming out, we're not going to talk about it this podcast, but I believe it has some more negative aspects to
And then
it.
Saturn, yeah.
Yeah. So it'll just be very interesting to see that contrast and how it's just different than the Pisces eclipse.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking like, well, eclipses in general were always considered negative, like at least in traditional astrology. I think in modern astrology, they started associating like the south node with better experiences or something.
Really?
But yeah, I don't because I don't know. I don't know. There was like a general like one was better than the other, but in traditional astrology, they're both really bad. And they both just like bring things that were obscure to light. So it's always not generally a negative transit. And I just think Jupiter in this position, Jupiter's not gonna suddenly come and make it positive and rainbows, which is like kind of what I was saying in the last podcast. What I was like, I was just cautious about that last week because like Jupiter also just expands, like, without bias. Like it's just expanding everything. And so I think Jupiter's influence wasn't really a positive influence, it was just a loud influence, if
Yeah,
that
I
makes
think
sense.
yeah, I think like when we reflect on like traditional astrology, like Jupiter's considered a benefic. So sometimes we confuse maybe the word, bene in Latin means good.
Right.
So it's
Because
like we can,
benefic was just to create more of something, and a malefic was to
right?
cut away from something.
Right, right. So, yeah, mal in Latin means bad. So we have like these, verbal connotations that make us believe like, oh, benefics are good and malefics are bad, but it doesn't necessarily like translate to that in, life. Like it could be, a Jupiter transit could actually be quite painful depending on what it is expanding. Like I
Right.
remember me and Maddie were just talking about this before we recorded the podcast. Like I remember when Jupiter was in my 12th, it was like a really isolating and lonely time for me. Um, because it was expanding like themes of the 12th of being alone and isolated. And Maddie is going through that transit right now. Um, so yeah, it's just like you said, like it's just expanding whatever it's touching without necessarily, you know, bias of it being like a good thing or a bad thing. And especially with Jupiter being in Cancer, it's very much expanding our emotional world.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting too. We had this eclipse that has these huge water significations, these, huge interactions between like water planets. And when water planets come into play, that is like you can run, but you can't hide energy. It's like, your emotions are going to come to the surface whether you like it or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do feel like that was brought up a lot. So,
Yeah, I mean, especially like with the assassination, I'm sure that was very much like an emotional response to what he was saying.
yeah. Yeah. And in general, there was also like a high school shooting that day, same time too, but that one wasn't as broadcasted after Charlie. So,
I mean,
yeah.
I feel like that happens every day in the US. So at this point, I'm not surprised, but mm,
I don't
still
know. I
sad.
don't know. It's like how much more is that going to take for us to change it? Probably won't ever, but
No, I don't think people are like, Republicans are very, not all of them. I'm not going to like cast a net, but a lot of people that are into their gun rights are very into them. So, and very protective of that. So I don't think it's going to change, unfortunately.
our culture needs a whole like rebuilding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We are like very much, that is like a cultural thing, especially that's a like people's hobbies, like they go shooting or like go
Yeah.
hunting in the fall and that's taking away a whole, you know, part of them, so I could understand.
It's a whole bigger discussion, but that's what the outer planets are for. So
Yeah, yeah, very much
well,
so.
let's get into the astrology for this week, though, and at least on the 15th, which is Monday, is going to bring our first aspect, which is just Venus sextiling Mars. So Venus over in Leo is making a sextile to Mars in Libra.
Um,
And let's see, this is happening right after the Mercury Sun conjunction in Virgo. So I think it's whatever insight was brought up from that conjunction, from that interaction, maybe now you're starting to align, desires and actions together to maybe make a change or like initiate something. I don't know. It's a technically it's a pretty positive aspect with like Venus ruling Mars right now. So
Mhm,
maybe it
mhm.
helps make the Mars in Libra transit better too. I don't know.
Yeah,
How do
I'm
you feel
hoping
about it?
so. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way that you do. Like, I'm hoping it's like a little bit sweeter. I think Mars and Libra has kind of been challenging overall, so um yeah, I'm just hoping that Venus kind of sweetens it up a little bit. Mars is also, almost wrapping up its time in Libra too, so could be, like a sweeter, it's not a total goodbye yet, but sweeter little interaction.
Ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it should feel better Mars coming to the end of Libra than it was when it first entered Libra and it was opposite Saturn, Like I do think
Yeah,
we
that
got the
was not
worst of
ideal.
Mars. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was like the worst of it. And this is probably like, okay, I see how I mean, maybe even if you've been going through changes in your Libra house, if you've been cutting away from things or like taking action differently in whatever house Libra is for you, the Venus sextile can help you understand that or help you feel more positive about that in general. So,
Yeah, I think that's a really good interpretation of that because I definitely think there has been like some cutting away of whatever, you know, house
yeah.
Libra is in, or I mean, yeah, Libra rules.
Hmm.
So yeah, it can help you kind of see like, okay, like this is why that had happened, or like coming, like having peace with it in some way. Um, yeah, especially
Right.
because I think Libra too likes to like keep the peace, and with like Mars cutting away things, it's like not very Libra, and it's kind of just like uncomfortable in general, to like hold those like sharper boundaries, I think. So, yeah, it'll help you make peace with that. Anything else you want to mention about that one?
No, we can go ahead and move on.
Okay, so our next transit is on the 17th. Oh, and sorry, I wasn't even popped over to the day, but I drew the transit anyways. So, let's see here. Okay, doke. So we have Mercury in Virgo going opposite Saturn in Pisces. Mercury right here. Saturn. Oh, sorry, that's Neptune. Right here. Saturn in Pisces. I think this is going to, kind of inform more about what this retrograde is coming up, is bringing up for us. Um, we have, let me move this a little closer. Um, we have some themes coming up about what Saturn and Pisces meant in general for us. And that was a really big, long 2.5 year transit. And it popping back in here is like having us revisit what did this last 2.5 years bring up for you? How did you grow and how did you evolve? And maybe what fragments or pieces do you still need to clean up from that transit? Like, is there anything left over that you feel like, um, I had learned this lesson, but I'm still kind of dabbling in it a little bit, or, I still haven't like developed the full picture of what this meant for me. We're having conversation here, but between that and, as an opposition, it's kind of like bringing up like the starker parts of it, what, like I said, like what didn't you do that you need to do still? Um, it's just kind of like that you're not finished yet feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I because it is a lot about Saturn and Pisces now, and this is the story that we have until February of 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And it is like, in a way, too, it's like Saturn's story is obviously connected to the eclipses. And like, even whatever, if you got a lot of insight from the Mercury Sun conjunction in Virgo, like, if you got a lot of like, okay, I can move this forward. Here's my problem solving. Here's what I'm going to do to like address these issues. I wonder too, though, if it's also like a realization of, well, here's the problems with your plan, right? Saturn is showing you why this won't work, why this can't move forward. Hey, you forgot about the other half of the equation, which is the Pisces house, as like you are also responsible for this. So, how are you going to include the Saturnian responsibilities to your plan and idea, or whatever you're creating in Virgo? You know,
Yeah.
so I do think it also just kind of really highlights what is holding you back and like what needs to be addressed in that sense too, like both connected to the Pisces or the Saturn and Pisces story, but also connected to the Virgo eclipse story and Mercury and Virgo, you know.
Yeah, yeah, we got a lot happening with those two houses at the moment. Um, it's interesting too that this happens like right almost smack dab in the middle of the eclipses. So, it's just like a further play out of that story. There's a lot happening in the Pisces house at the moment and, a lot happening in the Virgo house. So we're just, continuing to gather information about that, throughout these transits, I think.
Right. If anything, this will just be like a foreshadowing of the eclipse that happens on the 21st. That will be in our next podcast.
Oh, because
As
it's
like
square Saturn, right?
it was opposite Saturn. Yeah.
Oh, it's opposite. Yeah, sorry, opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because it's opposite Saturn. So Mercury here, being the messenger is like, hey, by the way, like you do get messages today. Like definitely pay attention to them because it's probably something that's going to come up with the eclipse.
Right, right. Yeah, Saturn is definitely having major conversations. Conversations with Saturn too do not feel great. It's like, they highlight limitations and that
Yeah.
is like not fun for anybody, especially because you think, consciously you think like, "Oh, I've already dealt with all of this." And then, it's like, you
You
still have that
haven't.
limitation." Yeah. We
You
haven't
still
totally
haven't.
released you yet. It's kind of like you're going to be released from jail and then it's like you go to court and they're like, "Sorry, 2 more weeks for you," you know.
It is Saturn is really you think you're done with it and then you're not done with it at all.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
And
yeah, not
it's
fun.
continuing now. But
Mhm.
that will be that little start, a little message there on the Wednesday on Mercury Day too. So that's fitting. Um,
Yeah, so Wednesday
and
might feel a little bit more challenging, I think, than it normally does.
yeah, for sure, definitely with
Mhm.
Mercury in a challenging place. Um, but then Mercury will move. Is it moving really quickly? It moves into Libra on Thursday, and so very more shift here. Mercury does have triplicity rulership, so it's not just it doesn't do too bad in this air sign, but in Libra, I don't necessarily like it because now there is this gap between like what's happening in Virgo and now the ruler is in Libra. So there's like a little bit of this blindness to things going on in Virgo, but Mercury starts shifting its focus on like socializing and more social interactions and friendships and like aesthetics and beauty and connections through that way. But we can't forget that like we're still in Virgo season having to deal with material matters too. So I think that's just very
Yeah.
Libra, but a balance is needed for both.
Yeah, and I think this also like ropes Libra into the picture a little bit more when it comes to the eclipse. Like, since our eclipse is happening, we will have Mercury in Libra. That house is somehow being affected too, which you might not have thought, you might not have
Right.
realized, like, oh, my Libra house actually is like a little piece of the picture to what's happening, here. So, yeah, we have like we definitely have conversations happening like because Pisces was linked to Jupiter and Cancer in some way. So we have, the Cancer influence there. And then we got, Virgo with Mercury in Libra. That's also a conversation too. So definitely like an opportunity to look at your chart and look at, okay, where obviously Virgo and Pisces are, but also where's Libra and Cancer? How is that, piece of the puzzle in some way? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Cool.
Um,
So, let me see here. Next, we have Mercury in Libra is opposing the Neptune in Aries.
Yeah, it's basically just interacting with all of the outer planets.
Yeah. So we have a trine to Uranus and an opposition. And also trine to Pluto.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so we got some big conversations right here with Mercury entering. Definitely the opposition to Neptune makes things probably a little bit more confusing or highlights Neptune and Aries in some way, whatever that means for you. But a trine to Uranus and trine to Pluto, maybe is like giving you some kind of energy or spark to communicate differently or speak about things differently or even think about things differently. Maybe just with it being ruled by Venus right now, maybe you think about things like a little bit more pleasantly than you would before. Um, I definitely think having Mercury move from very analytical Virgo to moving into Libra has you thinking about things from more like an aesthetic perspective, or like you're just considering how things look more than, getting like the details of them. So you might be focused on the looks of things, whether that be like socially or aesthetically or whatever, and that might just inform your decision making or your plans in some way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just think like whenever we're just in a period of time, right, where all these outer planets are in interaction with each other. Even Uranus is really in a very close trine with Pluto, and
Mm-hmm.
now they both are sextiling Neptune. Like we've had this happen before. I want to say last year when they were all at like the last critical degree of each sign, like when Pluto was back in Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so like that brought a lot of significant change because I was also Pluto and Capricorn was when Trump got elected. And so this like it's just speaking to this period in our lives that is a lot of significant change and growth and sudden growth, like collectively in the government and even perhaps within yourself, like what you're initiating and starting. And so, like, there is this just deeper feeling of things at work. And I do feel like for this day, as Mercury enters in Libra, it's just really speaking to like your higher dreams, your higher goals that you're working through, and what you're seeing unfold in your life long term. That's like a significant impact. Like, what has changed for you recently that really changes the way that you even look at life. And then collectively, we already kind of see what's going on, but all that's going to be more heightened. And like, even though this eclipse is at 29 Virgo coming up and it is opposite Saturn, it's a 29 Virgo in like 50 minutes. Like, it's very close to about changing into Libra. And as soon as that, like, that moon, the eclipse moon does move into Libra, like a 2 hours after the eclipse itself, and that interacts with all the outer planets. So again, like it's almost like this eclipse is more important because of its like more significant outer interactions. And again, Mercury ruling the eclipse is moving ahead and giving us this foreshadowing. So again, just like the previous eclipse when we were having this build up with Uranus stationing retrograde, we're also having a significant build up this week with all
Mm-hmm.
these like discussions from Mercury.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah, we got definitely a lot of build up energy going on. It's definitely, yeah, I'm just picturing in my mind like a graph, that goes is like
Right.
going up and like just gaining more and more. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's gonna be, equally as intense time as, the previous eclipse, just
Oh,
like the
for
buildup.
sure.
And yeah, and you mentioned, like, we just are in that period of like big shift and big change individually and collectively. So, there's just a lot of energy that comes along with that. I was just looking at the chart though, when did Mars go opposite Chiron? I'm not sure
Oh,
like what
I
day was
didn't
it go?
include it this week, but it was the 16th.
It was on the 16th. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So that, I mean, that might be just another little thing, just like another pain
Right.
point that kind of pops in. Um, at some point. So,
Yeah,
yep.
like not feeling like your actions are making a difference, which I think is for most people.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next day we have Venus entering into Virgo.
Oh, with the moon.
Yep, with the moon. Hopefully that's a like a sweet little thing. You know, actually, very interestingly, I've been wanting to talk to you about this because I've seen a
Mhm.
couple of charts lately that have Venus conjunct the moon. And
Interesting.
yes, and my mom is one of them. And I have been trying to understand what that means because both of these people um are not like flashy people, but I felt like when I was trying to interpret it, I was like, "Oh, do they have like this desire for like a nice, pleasing life in some way, or like things to be nice and aesthetic?" And the answer is yes, but also no. So it's just very interesting, this combination.
Well, I think it depends on the sign. I have them both in the same sign. They're like 10 degrees separation from conjunction, so not too far apart either. But I have it in Venus's ruled sign, and it's definitely like I definitely like things that are easier and comfort, and like my comforts are definitely through like friendships and also just like an easier, softer life. But I think it depends on the sign. Like it's just um, I do feel like the moon is like how we nurture ourselves and our emotion. And then with Venus, it's like what brings you pleasure through this sign, you know? And that's how you nurture yourself as often through pleasure as like, but whatever that sign is, like in Virgo, Venus is in fallen here. I was gonna say detriment. She's fallen here. And so like it may not be through like pretty aesthetics or like comfortable things. It may be through constantly organizing or telling people what to do or,
Hmm.
being in service. It's like, but there is, I feel like with the Venus moon, there's definitely a interpersonal relationship connection. Like I feel like those people need interaction with people in some way, even if it's like obscure and online or something.
Yeah, very like a people component to it.
Right.
Yeah, this could also speak to like I know when you're looking at like global transit charts, um when the moon comes into play, this very much speaks to the people at large. And
Right.
Venus conjuncting the moon in Virgo could definitely make people very analytical and very outspoken about what kind of change they want to see. Like what are their desires
Critical.
for the future? Yeah, like politically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I could definitely see that being like a conversation that comes up. Um,
Yeah. Well, Venus being in here kind of helps us because she's ruling Mercury. And so they're in this mutual reception where they're in each
right.
other's houses,
Hmm.
but they're still blind to each other. So I think Venus is trying to make, the critical analysis more comfortable and like bringing apart things that don't work and being clear about what could work. And Mercury is trying to be more people pleasing with his communications or just more, like charismatic is the word I'm looking for about how we're going to do things. So there's just a shift where it's like instead of being so hyper analytical, you're trying to make it a little bit more malleable to the general world
Yeah, we have
too.
like a softening of like the Virgo energy and then like an
Yeah.
increased criticism in the Libra energy. We're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're like flipping a little bit. Yeah, so um yeah, that'll definitely be interesting though.
Yeah, it will. So that just brings us then on our last aspect, which is the 20th of Saturday, right before the eclipse. Just Uranus just can't not not be part of the party. Venus does square Uranus as the moon is meeting the south node, and we're building up for the eclipse
Hmm.
here. So again, another like disrupting energy, another sort of like change or shift, and like it's challenging. Like I feel like this one's gonna be a little more challenging just because Venus is in a fallen placement. So it's not like like when they're in a fallen sign, they're not necessarily respected, they're not necessarily appreciated. Venus and Virgo is about being orderly and getting things done, and Venus here is just trying to make things pretty or like connect people, and Virgo's like that's just waste of our time. And so Venus is always trying to make things more appeasing, like we talked about, and then Uranus comes and like drops his curveball in the middle of it and being like, now work with this,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I don't know. I just can be a disruption to your relationship. It's just a disruption to your Venus ruled houses, a change with how you're communicating and relating to other people, and then collectively probably challenges to women because why would
Right.
we get away from anything like that?
Mhm. Right. Yeah, I mean, we could also have some challenges with men coming up too, as there's the opposition from Chiron with Mars, but um
Yeah,
yeah, definitely throws the picture off a little bit and further ropes in like that Libra aspect of it, with like
right.
there being a square. There's some kind of tension I think happening definitely with the Libra house.
Oh, for sure. And it's connected to the Virgo house. So
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
two are really
Yeah, they're kind
involved
of
right now.
like they're going through the eclipse, I feel like holding hands, like
They are.
yeah, they're like, we're not doing this without one another.
Yeah,
Yeah, which like I said, like before analyzing the charts, like you probably wouldn't have known that, but
right.
now you know that like Libra is a much bigger part of the story.
Like you definitely want to talk about Pisces. You definitely want to talk about the Virgo Pisces axis, but you also, like you said, want to look to Libra and you want to look to Cancer and see
Mm-hmm.
how those houses are being imported into your Virgo Pisces houses. Like how is the significations of what's going on in Libra impacting Virgo Pisces? What significations going on in Cancer impacting your Virgo Pisces? Like they're all connected right now.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
next podcast we will be talking about the eclipse, which is happening on the 21st.
Yeah.
So tune in next week to chat about that. I'm sure you'll be curious, as will I. Um,
We
yeah.
Yeah, that's what we'll be. We'll talk all about it next week. If you want more content from us, you can follow us on TikTok or Instagram, and YouTube videos are out for these as well. So give those a listen, and we will see y'all next week.
See you.
Bye.